All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome tonight. This is Cathexis, and once again, I've got Quantumeraser here. We're going to be covering just a couple little basics of some things that we were. Well, actually, John's gone over a little bit before, but he wants to make some clarifications and such. And so it'll be kind of a miscellaneous show of sorts. How you doing tonight, John?
Very well, sir. Thank you.
Excellent. But I guess, let's just get this going. We'll jump right into the presentation, and then we're going to have a brief little conversation about what I like to call alternative cosmology afterwards. So go ahead and go for it, John.
All right. Thank you.
Hmm.
Well, during the recap in episode 5, I left sort of a watermelon-sized curveball that was hanging out there, and no one's really discussed it. I'm sure people are busy. And I wanted to show this because I've never heard anyone talk about this in all my travels. No one's brought it up. I find that pretty surprising, and you're going to see why here in a minute. So remember, we'll just do a little brief review of scientific hypotheses, the scientific method, scientific theory. It won't be, it'll be painless. And then we'll get into a subject that I don't know if anyone has any comment on. They could leave the comments below, but below the video. But I'd be interested in what people have to say on this. So let's just go for it. So remember, like I said, a scientific hypothesis is a special kind of prediction that forecasts how the independent variable will affect the dependent variable. It's pretty cut and dry. And the scientific method is hypothesis driven. That's what the scientific method is. You don't have hypotheses, you don't have the scientific method. So one makes an educated guess to explain a cause and effect relationship. The independent variable is the cause, and the effect is the dependent variable. That's your prediction. And as it says here, a scientific hypothesis is based on cause and effect reasoning again. A hypothesis does not merely state X and Y may be related, but explains why they are related. So it's dealing with explanations here. That's very important. There's a very important distinction between a description and an explanation. So a scientific theory represents a hypothesis or group of related hypotheses which has been confirmed through repeated experimental tests for the 878th time during our episodes. But repetition is good. It's important. And you can't have an actual scientific theory without it already being validated or confirmed by experiment. Another word for an experiment is a hypothesis test. And you can't have math or equations for a scientific theory. It's tantamount to having Mary Bachelor. Why? Because mathematics at best merely describes. Whereas real scientific theories, they explain the how and the why. In fact, there's two tenets that I would say in every scientific theory. You're always going to get an explanation on the how and the why. That's the mechanism or the process. And it identifies the cause. That's very important. Like germ theory. Scientific theories are the result of validated, confirmed scientific hypotheses that have been rigorously tested, like we just went over. Now, I want to juxtapose that with scientific laws. They describe the what or the is. The cause is not applicable. They are based solely on observations, often expressed mathematically, like, for example, the second law of thermodynamics. You see, with scientific laws, the cause and the how and the why, the mechanism, are both nonsensical and they're invalid inquiries. You can't get there. It's just an is and an are. For example, why does heat flow from hot to cold always? Well, we don't know, and we'll never know. All we know every single time, it just does and is. Ergo, scientific law. That's why they're called the laws of thermodynamics and not the theories of thermodynamics. Scientific laws never become scientific theories or vice versa. Each are domain specific inherently. So, having gone through all that, what should have been everyone's next objection or their challenge or their inquiry? I hope nobody can see that through there. I can see it a little bit. So, is anyone saying, are you watching the chat, Cathexis?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, is anyone saying anything? What's the next objection?
Oh, it was not very active currently, but go
Okay,
on.
okay. This should have been the next objection. What makes the laws of physics scientific, right? That's a really good question. It's a question I asked myself not that long ago. Well, what makes it scientific? Because I really don't know. So this is what I came up with. Scientific laws, that is, the laws of physics, are not scientific. So I know people are going to start jumping off bridges, taking their medication. The cognitive dissonance is going to start rolling the rooster. They're going to say, "Oh, he's crazy now. He's going off the reservation." But just hear me out for a second. Scientific laws are merely descriptions. They're often expressed mathematically of plain old observations of nature. See, the scientific method is employed to elucidate and explain cause and effect, the hows and the whys, not describe the whats and the ises. Scientific laws only breach the first step of the scientific method. That's my proof. It's over right there. This. Observe a phenomenon. You can't formulate a hypothesis, a scientific hypothesis. You just can't do it. It's out of context. You can't formulate, like I said, a scientific hypothesis, step 3, because a viable cause or independent variable doesn't exist. Forever illusory. Forever. So let's take a look at this. We got Max Tegmark. He's a professor of physics at MIT. See what he has to say about this. We humans have gradually discovered many additional recurring shapes and patterns in nature, involving not only motion and gravity, yeah, right, but also areas as disparate as electricity, magnetism, light, heat, chemistry, radioactivity, subatomic particles. These patterns are summarized by what we call our laws of physics. He goes on to say in the same article, when we look at reality through the equations of physics, we find that they describe patterns and regularities. That's all they do. Therefore, the laws of physics are mathematical, i.e., they're descriptions of mere observations of what? The laws of nature. That's all they are. But wait a second. My son is a video game champion. He can readily recognize and describe the recurring patterns and regularities present in the game, all the while being absolutely clueless about the underlying architecture or the software of the game. But he intuitively knows that the patterns and irregularities in the game are not the cause of the game. And is my 10-year-old a scientist? I don't think so, not yet. So how can the laws of physics, descriptions of patterns and regularities in nature via equations, have anything whatsoever to do with the scientific method? Science. When the scientific method is solely based on hypothesis testing, which is only employed to explain, not describe, cause and effect relationships. Like I said, the hows and the whys. See, describing focuses solely on the whats and the ises. Explanations focus solely on the whys and the hows. There's a big difference between describing something and explaining cause and effect, like actual hypothesis testing or experiments. You see, watching heat flow from hot to cold or gases flow from high pressure to low pressure isn't an experiment. It's merely observing a phenomenon, the first step of the scientific method. Have the laws of motion ever caused a single billiard ball to move across the table? No. We only use those laws to describe something that's already existing. And it's just an observation. The story begins and ends at the first step of the scientific method. Well, is that science? Nope. But you say, well, I object. But we can predict. Okay? So after observing heat flow from hot to cold for a few billion times, that's the second law of thermodynamics, without fail, you scientifically predict, ahem and genuflect, that if I set my scalding hot cup of coffee on the table for 20 minutes, it's going to get cooler? Wow, a seer! Thanks, Captain Obvious. You must be a scientist. You see, because a complete moron at the beginning of time could have reached the same conclusion in a coma. Crocheting is more scientific than the scientific laws. You see what they do? They just throw the term scientific in front of the word law by mere fiat without any warrant whatsoever. If you watch the past presentations, one of them is the turkey squirrel scenario. Then, see, this is what they do. Since heat flows from hot to cold always, then they describe it using equations, then pronounce from the rooftops that this is a scientific law, that is science, ahem, genuflect again. See, this is second grade slick. It greases the skids for their propaganda efforts with Joe Coffey and Betty Breadmaker, you know, the masses of the scientific illiterate public, to now put the term scientific in front of just about anything to offer it some veracity and validation. So that's what they do here. This is, you see the game here. See with all these guys. See, they just throw the term scientific here all willy-nilly, and they put it out here, and it offers some veracity from, I don't know, from the Black Lagoon somewhere. I don't know where they're getting the veracity from just from the mere term science or scientific. You need to see the game here, folks. This is the game. In conclusion, file 13, the term scientific with law is a belly laugh. It's incoherent. At best, it doesn't fit. What they are simply descriptions of what? Natural laws. That's all they are. So, what should be your next objection? You should say, well, John, you got a problem. Because you contradicted yourself then. Because in the last presentation, I proffered a scientific law. Right? I did. Here it is right here. The scientific law. Information code software is only ever caused by intelligent agency without exception. So am I busted? Or am I? Like I said before, remember, scientific theories, we're looking for two tenets. The explanations of the how and the why, that's the mechanism or the process, excuse me, and to identify the cause. So both of those. Can't have one or the other with scientific theories, both of them. And like I said, germ theory. So my law is a special situation because I have the cause, right? I have the cause. Whereas other scientific laws, like the second law of thermodynamics, I mean, you can list all the laws. There is no cause whatsoever. There's none. But in mine, I have the cause, right? Because it's intelligent agency. So I got half the equation there. That small fact right there led to the ability to formulate a null hypothesis. See, once I'm able to form that, I'm good to go. It's making it actually scientific. However, what I can't do, I can't make it a scientific theory because I can never explain by experiment the how and the why. Make sense? I thought I'd explain that to you because it's an important point, and I hope that resolves a lot of issues. But I want people to think about that scientific law issue, and give me what you think. Like I said, I haven't heard anyone, for the lack of a better term, attack it like that. But I'd like to see others' opinions on that and see if I'm off the reservation there. I don't think I am. I think I drilled down far enough to show the reasons why, or to give the rationale why. Okay, the dating game. This is another fairy tale science, what they like to call science. So any fifth grade general science graduate knows prima facie that all dating methods, all of them, are outside the purview of the scientific method. For goodness sakes. You have no independent variable so as to form a valid scientific hypothesis, science, because remember, the scientific method is hypothesis driven, to test and validate your prediction. That's science. So the independent variables are the input. That's the cause you were inputting into your experiment. That is changed. That is manipulated and varied by the scientist purposely, so as to measure or validate the output, the effect, the dependent variables, your prediction. Independent variables are the sine qua non. They're indispensable to scientific hypotheses. You can't have a scientific hypothesis without an independent variable. Can't have it. Then ipso facto experiments. If you don't have a hypothesis, you don't have any experiment. So can somebody please elaborate? How on earth can you change the input and test your prediction on a past event without a time machine? It's impossible. You can't. Anyone that brings up any dating or how old this is or how old that is, they're in a simple category error if they want to frame it under the scientific word. You can't do it. The scientific method is used to validate cause and effect relationships. It's non sequitur to use it to extrapolate age of anything. It's tantamount to using a framing square to calculate the GMP of the Netherlands, for goodness sakes. This is a better question. So, given the immutable fact that it is outside the purview of the scientific method and can never, ever be validated, why on earth are these long ages pushed ad nauseum, mainly by pseudoscientists, then stage 5 clung to with a kung fu death grip, then blindly parroted by the masses as fact, and all the challengers ridiculed endlessly for bringing up the topic? Pray tell. Sure sounds like propaganda to me. It's quite mind-numbing. Let's pile on and beat the dead horse. So, according to Niels Bohr, Werner Heisenberg, Max Born, described by Erwin Schrödinger, then validated repeatedly via thousands of experiments without exception for the past 100 years with the most successful branch of physics, history of actual science, quantum mechanics, independent of the knowledge of the which path information or of it existing, particles, photons, all elementary particles, atoms, molecules have no defined properties or location. They exist in the state of a wave function, which is a series of potentialities rather than actual objects. That is, matter doesn't exist as a wave of energy prior to observation, but as a wave of potentialities. Wave functions aren't waves, classical peak troughs. They are potentialities. They're probabilities. They have no mass energy. You can't give me the wavelength and frequency of a wave function. It's non sequitur from the Black Lagoon. To put it another way, the wave of a wave function is not a wave, like I said, in physical space. It's merely an abstract mathematical construct. They just conjured it to try to explain the results of the double slit experiment, the quantum erasers experiment, and the delayed choice experiments. That's all they did. So matter, our reality, doesn't exist without first a knower existence of the Witch path information. Like we went over before from Professor John Wheeler, it begins to look as we ourselves, by our last minute decision, have an influence on what a photon will do when it has already accomplished most of its doing. We have to say that we ourselves have an undeniable part in what we have always called the past. The past is not really the past until it has been registered. Or to put it another way, the past has no meaning or existence unless it exists as a record in the present. So, unless you can provide the name of the person who observed rocks, photons, gummy bears, anything, date and timestamp, registered and recorded them, then you must provide the decay rate for a wave of potentialities. Point blank. It'd be easier sprouting broccoli from your armpits. That's how ridiculous this is. All you have left to appeal to is light years, but I already debunked that. Please see episode 6, Speed of Light in the CMB, for the final nail in the coffin there. Hopefully there's no questions. I mean, we went over that part, especially with Professor Wheeler, and the quantum mechanics part now about, I don't know, 18 times. So now I call this the money shot now. Because somebody this morning, somebody had commented on a thread because I put my evidence against the spinning ball up on a few threads. I've been throwing this out there, for the past, month or so, because no one else is. I haven't seen anyone parrot what I told you to parrot, so no one's doing it. So I'm doing it. And what I did was I posted this on a few threads, and I got a comment back, and they called it the money shot. I really liked what they called it, because that's exactly what it is. This is irrefutable. I've already put this out there. No one can refute it. And I got my first drink some bleach today. That's the first time I ever received one.
Yeah, that's a pretty famous one. Bob gets that a lot, but
Does he?
Yeah.
Yeah. I got it in the very same thread with the money shot. He just came right out and said it. He goes, "You need to drink some bleach." Now, I don't know. He's possibly a pre-trib pacifist. I don't know. So let's go through. I want to go through this like I did before. This is pretty easy to reconcile. If you don't use it yourself, I mean, to talk with other people about it, I mean, you could use it for yourself. If you have questions, because if we're not spinning, then everything comes crashing down. And like I'm going to say in the end, I mean, you don't have that many choices. I mean, the ball's dead, or you're a spinning ball geocentrist. That's all you have left. So this is pretty cut and dry. I mean, like I said, for the Coriolis effect to exist, you must have necessary conditions, right? 2 differing frames of reference, 1 rotating coordinate system, the Earth, and 1 non-rotating coordinate system, the atmosphere. You have to have those conditions if the Coriolis effect exists in respect to the Earth. From our definition, again, from Douglas Seeger in the Introduction to Ocean Sciences, 2nd edition. This is Critical Concept Reminders. This is a university level textbook. Comes right out and says it. You go and find any definition on the Coriolis effect, it's more or less going to say the same thing. So when set in motion, freely moving objects, including air and water masses, move in straight paths while the Earth continues to rotate independently. because freely moving objects are not carried with the Earth as it rotates. The apparent deflection called the Coriolis effect. Now, my argument is not any apparent deflections. My argument is not the Coriolis effect at all. It's the tenets of the Coriolis effect that avail the opportunity to defeat it with a simple plane fight. So it's rotate independently. Basically, what they're saying here is anything not tethered to the Earth is independent of the rotating Earth. In their scenario, the Earth's rotating. However, anything not tethered to that Earth, it is separate from that rotating frame of reference. That's why they expound and say, well, we have the Coriolis effect. Well, no, they don't. And we're going to show you why. It should be that way, because if the Earth is spinning, then the Coriolis effect should exist with respect to the Earth. No way around it. It's just like on a merry-go-round. You have the Coriolis effect on the merry-go-round. So I'm not saying the Coriolis effect doesn't exist in a vacuum. I should have used a better term, better phrase than that. The Coriolis effect does exist in other contexts, right? But I'm saying that the Coriolis effect does not exist with respect to the Earth atmosphere context. And this is why. See, if the Coriolis effect exists, then a flight from Charlotte, North Carolina to LA, nonstop, traveling at 500 miles per hour, that's the airspeed, with both locations roughly on the 35th degree north latitude, that is, both locations, Charlotte and Los Angeles, are allegedly spinning at roughly 860 miles an hour. That flight should be 1.5 hours, but it's not. The flight time is 4.5 hours. So the Charlotte to LA flight, the airspeed should be 500 miles an hour. The ground speed is 500 miles an hour plus the 860 miles per hour rotation speed coming into your face, because you're flying from east to west and the Earth is spinning from west to east. So it's spinning underneath you as you're flying towards it. So in my example, we have two differing frames of reference, the Earth and the atmosphere and everything in it. Number two, the plane in the atmosphere is freely moving. It's not attached or not tethered to the rotating coordinate system. In other words, based on the law of non-contradiction, each the Coriolis effect and the Charlotte flight are either both true or both false. And that flight is most assuredly false. In conclusion, the Earth is not spinning. Therefore, the ball goes by way of the dodo bird, or you're a stationary ball geocentrist. It's
Which
over.
seems to be the trend lately.
Yeah, that seems to be the trend. You're right. I've been hearing a lot about that. Yeah.
It's a safe spot to land, I think. I think that's what it is. Yeah.
So to finish up with this is what you're going to have to do. The only way the above can be refuted is if you're of the position that the atmosphere spins in lockstep with the Earth. So if you feel that that's the case, this is what you're going to have to do. You have to explain how the Coriolis effect can exist then. Because the necessary conditions for it to exist are two differing coordinate systems or reference frames. One rotating, like I said, the Earth, and one non-rotating, the atmosphere and everything in it. Number two, you need to show the experiment where gases or a gas rotates in lockstep with a rotating solid body just 5 centimeters above the surface, then provide the mechanism. Then my ultimate favorite. Please explain east, north, and south surface winds. You could just go with this one. Don't even worry about the other ones. It's over. It's over right here. Why? Because these two are contradictory statements. A, the atmosphere spins in lockstep with the Earth. And B, the existence of east, north, and south surface winds. This is so easy and to reconcile that it shocks them, because I've brought this up to a few people on Hangouts and a few people personally. It kind of shocks them. They're not ready for it, because that's exactly what it means. They can't both be true. They are mutually exclusive based on the law of non-contradiction. Both can't be true. It's a football bat. It's a pillow hammer. It's a married bachelor. It's achromatic rainbows. Which one of these do you think is false? Which one? I know it's, go ahead and consider. I'm going to give you.
You know what?
8 minutes.
Well, I've been raised, believing that the Earth spins and that it's a ball, and I know Wikipedia and Rational Wiki tells me it is. So I would say that B isn't true. It just can't be.
Can't be true. So there's no
Can't
east,
be.
north, and south surface wind. I would suggest not to attend any meteorological schools. So, hey, listen, thanks for your ear. Have a nice day.
Hey, there you go. And this last bit that you're going over here, it really needs to be discussed. I've seen some responses to it where they're saying inertial frame of reference. That what is it? Conservation of momentum concerning. Yeah, that the plane's taking off, so it gets locked into that frame of reference or something. These are the things they. What's that?
Did you receive any stereo isomers?
But I mean, it seems that they have to go to these links to kind of like over-explain what has to happen for the spinning Earth to exist, and while at the same time, these flights and everything operating within it.
I don't know what their argument is, because they can bring up those things. They would be better off bringing up the color of the wings. The paint on the wings has more relevance than the arguments that they just put out.
Well, what I'm coming to here is that is it possible, just possible, that there's some elegance to this situation, and the fact that maybe it's not spinning and the planes are just operating over, I don't know, a level surface. Just possible.
You mean planes?
Yeah, and they call them airplanes. I wonder what the etymology of that word is.
I don't know, man. I think they're trying to trick us.
I think so. What does plane mean? But yeah, we have all these indicators. Our language is our indicator. We look at the complexity that would have to exist for us to be able to live on a spinning ball. There's such an elegant answer on the other side of things, and I think that a lot of people have a problem with that.
Yeah,
so,
this is a real problem with people. I tell you what, I get that. This one, I said it shocks people. They're not ready for that one. They're not ready for the east, north, and south surface winds. You can't, if the atmosphere, think about it now. The Earth is spinning from west to east, and the atmosphere is spinning with the Earth. So the only winds that can exist in that situation is west winds.
Yeah.
Because if you have east, north, and south surface winds, that means that the atmosphere is not spinning with the Earth, and it's not.
Yeah, I had somebody in my life when I told them, to look into these topics, because I think it's possible, or at least it's worth investigating, that maybe the Earth is stationary, maybe the Earth might be different than what they've told us. And the person's immediate response was, wait, how could the Earth not be spinning? How else do we get wind?
Right, sure.
And this is the level of basic education that we get in America, for the most part, unless you go and specialize in a field, and you go in further education and whatnot. I mean, I was utterly shocked at how little I knew concerning, the proposed globe model.
I had somebody tell me yesterday that the winds, they came from ocean waves. So when I received the gust of wind, I went outside today. It wasn't all that windy, but I got a gust right before we had some rain come in. And I live, I'm in here in the Midwest. I don't know what's close. I guess the Gulf of Mexico is close to me. So it must have been a serious wave. Did you get hit by that wave?
Yeah, I
Did you?
did.
Because you're down there, right? You're in the Gulf. It would have to come up that way.
Who says things like that? You see, this is what's so bothersome about the modern, well, the education system in America. It's not satisfactory. But since we are on the topic of what I like to call alternative cosmology or a level Earth, people don't like people get triggered when you say flat Earth, so I try to avoid it.
Most
Um,
definitely.
we see it in the news. We've got Kyrie Irving. We've got, hell, even LeBron James had it in his mouth yesterday. He said, "Hey, Kyrie, you think the Earth is flat?" And Kyrie said, "Yeah, I guess that's news nowadays," which is just insane. These guys have hundreds of millions of fans,
Yeah.
who this is now in the public consciousness. There's no Pandora's box is open at this point. There's no going back. These topics will be discussed, reviewed, analyzed, and considered on such a large scale that we can't even really comprehend right now. We've been on the ground level this entire time,
Right.
and I'm absolutely grateful. These topics piqued my interest in the beginning because this is a massive possibility for some really interesting changes in this world. So that's the reason why I look at it. But Bill Nye covered it tonight, and funny enough, he used the old boats over the horizon thing. He went after Kyrie
They,
Irving, told him the Earth's the globe because boats go over curvature.
so they wheeled Bill Nye out?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, goodness
They
gracious,
did it
man. It's
last
like
time. They did it last time too, and I think Bob did it. They did Tyson, but then I think they addressed it again with Bill Nye.
that's like wheeling out Archie Bunker to discuss bigotry.
Bill Nye, the pseudoscience guy. Come on, man.
Oh man,
All
I
the
can't.
kids love him, man. Disney put them in front of two generations to learn about all the scientism they needed to, and then once they got old enough, they brought him back as some type of leader to tell them about, why the Earth's a globe because boats go over the curvature.
To be honest, I all I heard was the um the name of the basketball player that came. I heard three of them. Him, another guy. I don't know his name, but I heard Stephon Diggs came out and said something. But I haven't followed up on. I
Yes.
haven't read anything about him, so I can't comment on what they said or if anyone said anything in rebuttal to them. I
Well, there
haven't looked
was
at it.
there was one Warriors. Gosh, I can't remember. I think it might have been the Draymond Diggs or whatever. He's basically on the Warriors, and he said he agreed with him. And then there another guy who's a football player who
Yeah, Stephon Diggs.
it's Stephon Diggs, and then Draymond Green is the one who said he agrees with it, and Stephon Diggs said he did too. So, I mean, ESPN just held an hour-long debate on flat Earth the
No
other night.
way.
Yeah, this is getting beyond anything that we can imagine. It's
No, I didn't know that. Did they do it?
Yeah, they talked for an hour about what Coriolis effect was. Okay,
Nah.
yeah, I gotta send you the link.
Send the
Listen,
link.
this is getting insane. So people want to hear about it, and we're going to talk about it because like I said, they're wheeling out Bill Nye. They're talking about boats of the curvature. I've covered this extensively. Me, my good friend Isa, and What World D. We did several shows in the past. I think we did 3 of them on my channel where we spoke with Flat Earth Math, good old Chuck, and who is a heliocentric cultist. And then we also have a guy named Christopher Hitchlap. He's just as much as um, on the ball side. We'll put it that way. I don't want to be mean, but anyway, so we brought him on, and we found some very good footage that shows that I wish I could put it on right now, but I'll just briefly explain it. It shows it's a time lapse of this place called Skunk Bay, and it's just a camera overlooking a bay, and boats are coming in and out, etc. And during the day, as it heats up and as it cools down, the view of the horizon across the way starts to become obscured when it's really hot and moist out, and then once it cools back down, it's like the water was rising up and then rise
Oh,
and lowering down.
I saw that. Oh, that thing's perfect. That
Hmm.
I'm telling, yeah,
Actually,
that
Rob Skiba used it. Uh, Jared
yeah,
used it as well, and
it's outstanding. It
yeah,
explains with just pictures
yep,
what we're
just a
trying to
video.
talk about. That whole island the water goes up over the island during the
Oh
day.
yeah, absolutely. It looks
Yeah,
like the
yeah,
curvature is, it
yeah.
looks like this shore, which is only like, I don't know, probably about half a mile away. It looks like it gets completely obscured by the curvature of the
No,
earth.
it's more than half mile.
Well, perhaps so, yeah, mile and a half. But still, the point is though that this is because the atmosphere, the heat in the atmosphere, the difference of temperature,
Sure.
and the humidity or the lack of humidity in the atmosphere. Now, so what I've come to the conclusion of at this point in my research is that boats do not go over curvature if it's a globe or not. Okay? What's happening, you would not be able to see it go over curvature if it was a globe based off of the mathematics. It would just, you wouldn't notice that. What's happening is the atmospheric conditions, the swells, the waves, the angle of attack that you're looking down on that horizon, and the height of the observer. Those are the factors that you have to look at when you're seeing something being obscured from the bottom up.
Oh, it's and refraction.
That's what I mean by atmospheric
Oh,
effects.
okay, yeah, yeah, yeah. It displayed almost all of the effects of refraction in that. What was that? A
Exactly.
24 or
It was a
12-hour
24
lapse?
hours. Yeah, it was a
Okay,
24 hour. Oh, no, no, it was 12-hour time lapse. It was during the day.
right.
I'll see if I can get it up here real soon. I had to step away for a moment. But um, the point, though, I'm making is in those atmospheric conditions, you have the effects of refraction. And that word refraction gets thrown around by what I've noticed more mainly the globalists. They throw it around as if it's some type of one-shot silver bullet. They're like, wait
Right.
a second, you can see the what is it, Chicago, across Lake Michigan, 42 miles away because of refraction. It's wrapping the image around the ball. And to you, it'll make it look like it's a flat earth. It's just refraction. Don't worry about it. Well, when you look at refraction, what all that word means is it talks about several effects. You've got looming, sinking, reflecting. Help me out here, John. What are the other
It's
ones?
it's elevated, lowered.
Mm-hmm.
That speaks volumes right there with the
Mm-hmm.
obstruction.
Yeah, especially with the
Elevated,
lowering. Yeah.
there's mirages, elevated, lowered, shrinking, and stretching. And they
Yes.
can all occur at the same time.
Or none at all. And usually, what is dictating this is columns of air, hot and cold, moving or being stationary, whatever, and the amount of humidity within them. Now,
Yeah.
you could be looking at a column of air and then look through another column of air. So these
Yeah,
effects are
exactly.
expounded upon. So it is very difficult to ascertain what exactly is going on if you don't understand what that blanket term means. And
Right.
this whole notion of boats over the horizon, it is from Aristotle. This is the old wives' tale that we are told as
Right.
the greatest proof of a globe Earth that they have. Bill Nye just used it. If you go on YouTube and say, ask one of like Minute Physics or Vsauce or one of these top science guys on YouTube, they always use it as well. Boats over
No
the horizon.
way.
They do. They say that Aristotle figured it out when he saw boats being obscured bottom up. And what I've come to the conclusion at this point is that is not happening at all. I
Well,
live
let's take a look at it. So you said I'm going to have to go visit those websites and ask them. Okay, this goes back to what we were talking about before, right? With the scientific method. when you're viewing that, you're only observing a phenomenon. What's your experiment? What's your independent variable
Well,
in
that's
this
why it's not
experiment?
scientifically, it can't be
Yeah,
scientifically determined.
you're just observing something and then making up a just so story. See, this lines up
Absolutely.
with all the rest of the junk,
Well, let
right?
me go ahead and do this just so that we're on it. I'm going to go ahead and pull up this Skunk Bay footage because I think
Okay.
seeing is believing.
All right, let me stop sharing.
Let's see. Laps. Appreciate your patience, folks, but this is a big issue of mine. It's something that really makes me angry. That this is,
Yeah.
it really pisses me off that this one gets used still. I mean, if you're intellectually honest with yourself, you're going to look at this, and if you have a different response than what I'm trying to explain here, then there's something wrong because this footage shows it quite clearly. So here, let me go ahead and screen share this. All right, 1 second, folks. And I'll present. Let me choose the correct one.
Did you stop me or stop my screen share?
Yes, yes. Okay,
Okay.
so let me make sure this is up and going here. I think it should be. 1 second, folks. I appreciate your patience. Now, if it is going, just take a look here at, yes, it is. Okay, great. Now, this is early in the morning, and so you're going to see a little variation here, but please pay attention to the shore as I'm pointing out here with my mouse. Pay attention to the shore, pay attention to this house, these objects back here, and I'll stop it when we get to the point, but I want you to see the fluctuation of it's already occurring. It's already occurring with the day getting hotter. Now it looks like it's going down a bit. You'll see it start to go up a bit. There we go. There's a mirage effect right there. See, it's waving. Now, look at that. There's another good one. Now, imagine, now, mind you, this is a time lapse. So that's something that happened over a 15, 20-minute period, probably. So that, if you were standing on the shore and you had that line come across like you did, and you're looking at a boat, well, it's it's inconclusive as to what's happening. Now look at it. Is that the curvature of the Earth blocking out this house here? Oh, went back down again. Don't worry about it. So this footage is what did it for me in my research. Now, I've gone out to the Gulf of Mexico with binoculars. Oh, look at that. Hold on a second. There's the curvature of the Earth, guys. Pack it up, John.
Yeah, go ahead. It's good.
Pack it up. Oh my goodness, look at that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I go out to the Gulf with binoculars, and on a clear, crisp day, I can see 20 miles damn near. But on a hot, humid day, those boats look like they're going over curvature 5 miles out because of that. It's the atmospheric conditions, everyone. Now, this is not some type of,
it looks like the bay's getting flooded.
right? Look at that. There's curvature. Oh, look, it's round too. There's the curvature. You see it? But this is, and it gets better too once it gets to around 4 o'clock. Um, this has been my biggest pet peeve because if we want to be intellectually honest out here about these topics, this needs to be clarified. It needs to be spoken about, and we need to correct our arguments and sharpen our arguments to keep this in consideration because
That's
the people who argue against the notion of the earth might being flat say that this is curvature essentially, that the when you're looking over a straight shot of boats on the horizon and whatnot and they're being obscured, that's what they claim is the curvature. And just say, oh, and this also goes for when you're looking at a city across. So if you're looking at, Chicago and you take a picture of Chicago skyline, they'll be like, well, there it is, 300 feet obscured. That should be, right around the time that you should, see the curvature. That's what it is. That's a fallacious argument. It's absolutely fallacious. This is what we're dealing with here, people.
Yeah, that it just showed in the last 25 seconds or so every single element of atmospheric or terrestrial refraction.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And for me, this is what kept me on my path. When I realized this, because that was a big one for me, obstruction was a big one for me. I'm like, oh, well, you know what? It kind of makes sense. The math kind of makes sense. It matches up. But when you realize the atmosphere has such an effect of just 2 miles, we'll say that's about 2 miles. What do you think, John? About 2 miles of that shore? Mile and a half?
That's a good question, man.
Well, fair, whatever. All I'm saying is this is short. This is a short distance away. Now imagine looking over 42 miles of a lake, okay, and seeing, even though it was taken out of a time lapse, I don't know if everybody's seen those Chicago skylines footage, but there is some obstruction when you take the picture sometimes, and then there's not on other times. So my whole argument is this is exactly what we're dealing with here. It is just simply, shoot, 1 second, guys. Where's the other one? Here's another one real quick. I want to show you this other one called the Ghost Boat. Oh, shit. 1 second, guys. Take a look at this refraction effect.
Oh, I've seen that before. That's a joke.
No, it's not. It's real. It's reflection. This is reflecting the sky.
Yeah, exactly.
That's it. It's reflecting the sky, and yet it looks like there's a false horizon. See, people would perceive that to be the horizon when really it's where the boat is. So that's another effect of refraction.
It's reflecting the water. Yeah, you can't see the water, the texture of the water. Yeah,
exactly.
I seen it a long time ago.
Exactly. Now, here is one of the best footages I've seen of boats dealing with these mirage effects, and this person points it all out as we go. And I'll put these links in the description here. Look, there's a reflecting layer right here. So really, that's where the horizon is, but you have this reflecting going on here. But this has gone over extensively by many, many other people who are researching this topic. And I just wanted to touch on it quickly, just so that people can please don't be swayed by stupid arguments. That's my biggest thing.
That's a good one. Yeah, yeah.
Don't be swayed by stupid arguments, guys.
That Skunk Bay one is probably the best one I've seen.
Yeah, absolutely. And that shows everything we need to see. So it's a frustrating topic. I know it is. We've all been programmed. We've all been programmed to reject anybody saying that the Earth is anything other than a globe. That's a fact. Everybody think as soon as you hear the word flat Earth, what happens? You instantly laugh. You instantly reject. You instantly dismiss. You think it means anti-science, backwards, primitive, retarded. This is something that's been programmed into us. And why do you think that is? Why do you think that's universal in the West? I mean, you've had the same experience. I know you're a little bit older than me, John. Didn't you have the same sentiment about that word coming out of your schooling and into society?
The topic was never brought up. I don't remember even ever hearing about it.
Well, I mean, socially, you see the movies occasionally, you see it on TVs occasionally. I mean, didn't you ever have the impression that word, what did the word do to you when you first heard it?
I started laughing when and that was just recently. Like I said, when I was in school, back in the day, I don't ever recall it the subject or the word coming up at all. Zero. Nothing.
Well, of course, of course. But when you
Nothing.
heard it, you laughed at it, didn't you?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
That's the point I'm trying to
Yeah.
make, John.
Yeah.
That when you hear this, you just absolutely laugh and ridicule it and you think it's ridiculous. And I did for a good month before I decided to take it seriously for a moment, just to be sure. That's what we should all be doing, don't you think? But the problem is we've got to overturn so much programming and indoctrination and education, because education is beneficial. We have to overturn all of that before we could even consider the paradigm to be different. I mean, how long did it take you, John, to be able to look at this and with any type of seriousness, or at least how long did it take going through it before you realized there was something wrong?
You know what? Someone mentioned it. I would say maybe about a year ago. Just on the side, I heard it, and I didn't laugh at it. I just dismissed it.
Of course, yeah, I did the
I
same.
just dismissed it and moved on to the next subject, right?
Okay.
So, and that's that's what you do. And what's the greatest barrier, to knowledge? That's thinking you have the truth already.
Thank you, sir.
Yep, that's thinking you already have the answer.
That's beautifully put. And we did think that, didn't we? I know I did when I saw it. That's the reason why we laugh at it.
Yep.
Well, the floodgates they've been opened. Pandora's box is open. People who have a problem with this idea, they better get over it real fast, because we're about to hear about it quite a lot. And get ready for a good ride of learning. Now, you can reject it and operate out of cognitive dissonance, or you could say, you know what, let me give way to the possibility. Maybe I might be able to learn something. So it's hopefully we can get on their way to doing that with what we were talking about tonight. Is there any other compelling evidences that you've encountered against the globe?
Besides the what we talked about with the vacuum and non-vacuum, I mean that really, that doesn't have anything to do with the shape of the Earth. Like I
Well,
said,
it's part of the
however,
system. Yeah.
yeah, that takes to the woodshed.
Yeah, but
Everything.
here's the problem. The globalists say, well, there's a pressure gradient because of gravity.
Well, we've already been down that road that gravity doesn't affect anything. Gravity doesn't exist. We already debunked that.
Yeah.
And pressure gradients are always fleeting because it's always moving. Entropy is always moving. It's always flowing down a concentration gradient. It's never static. It's fleeting. So you may have a pressure gradient for a few minutes, few hours, a day or so, depending on the context of your system, but it's soon to get overwhelmed by entropy. Listen, it's just the second law of thermodynamics. It's over.
Yeah, when I was much younger, I even questioned it. Like, wait, vacuum of space. Wait, we have an atmosphere.
Hmm.
What? Like, it just didn't make sense to me, but you always defer to the white coats. Well, these smart men obviously have figured it out. Look at the images. Look at my textbooks. Everything looks so formal and authoritative. Must be true.
Yeah. Uh, kudos to you. I didn't even think about it. Didn't even pop up on my radar. So,
Well, it was brief. I mean, I think I was in earth science in eighth grade. I should have.
that's
Yeah, it's
that's
not much, but I had a lot of questions about this kind of stuff, and I think a lot of people do. A lot of people have, growing up. And it's funny, I find that in this whole community, this flat earth community, I've met so many women who just intuitively get this. And even some that have gone so far as say, yeah, it didn't make sense to me to begin with. So I just never paid attention to it. I just thought it was flat, privately, kind of. Now that could be ad hoc, after the fact type, wanting to make herself feel a little bit better about it. Who
Right,
knows?
right, sure.
But I've noticed that an intuitive person does seem to pick up on this stuff. It takes an intuition to have discernment. And I think that that's what we have to do here. We have to discern, take information from both sides, set your paradigm aside, and say, you know what? Let me give way for the possibility that I was wrong,
Yeah.
and that
Just just
everyone
to
else is too.
listen, it was just looking at it. That was my big thing. I never looked at it. I never questioned. It was like I told you before. The subject never came up,
Well, that's how we've
and I
been
never.
kind of directed that way, programmed that way.
Right.
We're given that
Exactly. I
globe.
was under.
We're under a spell almost. You
Yeah.
got this globe put in front of your face at such an early age, before your critical faculties could ever arise. And we don't, it's not like they sit down. It would be a good thing for learning for kids, eighth, ninth grade, maybe. They've got their critical skills at that point. They've got logic and reason to a degree. How about
Sure.
take them out to a beach on a field trip and say, okay, now look around and notice how flat the horizon is. Look at the sun and see how it's moving. It rose today and it's moving overhead. And also look at how still you are. Now, let me tell you why none of that's true. You know what I mean? Like, I'm talking about the mainstream answer. Like, that would be a good opportunity for learning, is if they held those two, your experiential situation, what you experience directly with your senses, and then say, now here's why it's a globe. Here's why it's really this.
Exactly. Yeah. You're using a canvas. You're using the canvas of juxtaposition. I love it. It's the perfect way to educate. Perfect. You can't get any better than that. That's how you do it.
Yeah, and I think that if they went down that path,
Yeah.
I think it would have been difficult for them to sell it to us, if you think
Yeah.
about it. I
Yeah.
think that's probably why they didn't go down that path, even though that would be the best way to teach these ideas. But it took me 35 years before I even asked the damn question, wait, is
Question.
the sun moving or am I moving?
That's the problem right there. See, once I stopped and looked at it, it was, I would say it took a minute because, as I said before, it was the vacuum up against the non vacuum. That's
Yeah.
all. It took me less than a minute. That's what was so frustrating after I was laughing at myself afterwards.
Yeah.
So,
Whatever the truth is at the end of the day, ultimately. And that's what this whole thing is about, in my opinion. We will find it because the cat's out of the bag. It's out there now. This is in the public consciousness. Now, my argument is that dogma is bad in this realm. Okay, and I made this very clear on a lot of other um, formats. Actually, I said it on Globebusters yesterday. It's so difficult to prove what it is past your convergence point. Most people resort to a belief system. You go ask the most normies on the street, they're going to tell you, well, yeah, I believe it's a globe. And they're going to use that word accurately and usually most of the time, okay? Because that's the truth of the matter. They don't know. They believe that it's a globe. So my issue in this whole community over the past 2 years is that there are a lot of people who have just replaced one belief system for another. And most people don't have the best reasons for it outside of they think that heliocentricity and the globe Earth is a lie, and then they'll just say, okay, well, it's definitely this. And I've seen it for concave too. I've seen plenty of concavers who do that, where they'll just say, well, it's not a globe, but concave makes the most sense to me. I believe it's concave, right? So I do wish that people would be a little bit more strict on what they know compared to what they believe. But that's on the individual. I can only warn about it. I can't enforce it in any way. So
sure.
I always like to make that clear.
It's just like you said, it's just getting people to look at it. Just look at it.
Yeah.
That's all they have to do is just look at it, with some type of sincerity.
Yeah.
And
it takes a
don't
little
look
bit
at
more than a week and a half to break, 30 years of programming. I've seen folks say, well, no, I looked at it for a week and a half. Oh, that's a stupid idea. It literally took me a good 2 months to be able to break through the paradigm enough to even take it seriously once I did begin looking at it. So it's phenomenal.
I can only speak personally. It took me less than a minute.
Well, good.
Less than a minute once I looked at it. That's all.
Well, no. I agree with that, but I had to really. There's a cognitive dissonance we all got to work through. You know what I mean? And you probably got through it, before you decided to look into it more. Like I dived into it with full blown cognitive dissonance. I was making fun of the whole thing as I was looking at it, that kind of thing.
Right.
So
right.
yeah, and it is different for every individual. I mean, I know people looking at it for 6 months and they still don't get it, and they go back to the globe without. They're just like, well, I'm more comfortable with this. This works. It matches consensus reality. So, I'll just stick with them. There, the masses know. And that happens,
Right. That's dangerous, man.
Yeah, but that's human beings, and that's a human situation. And people are hedging their bets. Trust me, those are the folks who will say, if it ever goes the way of, flat or whatever, those are the people who will say, oh, I knew it all along. Yeah, I was there from the beginning. Once everybody else goes with it. So it's just a matter of, folks got to take time to look at these things. Heliocentricity is absurd. It's a model that explains things, and that's all it is. It is not necessarily reality. We have a clock that spins over our head every single day that repeats every 24 hours. All that is observations. Knowing those repetitions does not give you the ability to scientifically predict things. They use this word. I'm sure you've noticed, John. And yeah, we did. It's really frustrating. And so I really think that they're living in a model. This is what I've kind of assessed this whole time, is that they think that they're on the third rock from the sun, spinning within this solar system, going through the galaxy, flying out of the Big Bang. They visualize it that way. They feel it that way. And what they're doing is they're living in a model and a mathematical extrapolation, because that's all the Big Bang cosmology is. We have no direct evidence that any of that is true. So let's see if we can wake some people up on that note, get them thinking.
Yes, sir.
Excellent. Is there anything else you'd like to add today?
No, except next week, man. We got to plug the season finale.
Oh, yes. Yes, we're going to go ahead and... well, actually, you want to do one more episode and then do that special presentation, or is the special presentation going to be it?
I'm thinking that special presentation needs to come out.
All right.
Great. It's going to be a barn burner.
All right. Yeah. So we'll do our John and I are going to be completing the season, as I guess we could call it. And then we're going to be working on some new projects behind the scenes. And I'll probably be doing some interviews and some other situations here once we complete this. But next week, we're going to go over the, what's her name again?
No, we're not going over that. It's the season finale.
Okay, it's going to be a surprise, but all those evolution questioners and all those dino skeptics, we want you here. I'm just going to put it that way, and we'll leave it at that. All right? So,
yeah, it's going to be the epitome of what we've talked about, scientism.
Absolutely.
It's going to be exhibit A through Z. And I'll tell you what, it's going to rustle some feathers, but those feathers need to be rustled. So tell your brothers, tell your sisters, tell your mother and your father, show up next week.
Yep. It's going to be good. We've had quite a bit watching tonight. We got 55 watching right now. And, I know the chat got a little trolly out there, but they can't really avoid that. But I want to give a big shout out to everybody who's been out here supporting us. Really appreciate the support. It really means a lot, and I hope you guys have gained enough from this as much as I have. I've learned a ridiculous amount since I've met John, and we've been doing these presentations. So look out for next episode next week. And John, you have a good night, and I hope everybody else does too.
You too, sir.
Thank you.